Greetings everyone, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, here to bring you another retro review from past seasons of The Loud House. In today's video, we take a look at that one episode from the 4th season where your love and hate for your fellow fans can be ruined, and for such trivial reasons. Today's episode is titled, Good Sports. First we'll discuss the plot, and then my thoughts and critiques with my final score. So, let's get right into it. In this episode, Lynn develops a sports buddy relationship with Mr. Grouse after she finds out they both love the same football team. However, their friendship falls apart the moment they try to watch a baseball game together and they're rooting for opposing teams. Lynn tries watching the game alone like she did before, but then comes to realize it's not as fun. Eventually, she and Mr. Grouse put an end to their quarrel and learn to get along as sports buddies despite their differences. Well, that concludes the plot of the episode, so now we come to my thoughts and critiques. As someone who grew up with a family and friends where one side supported Pennsylvania sports teams and the other supported New York sports teams, this episode was more relatable than it should have been, and that's a compliment, by the way. That's my first positive of the episode, the story itself. Much like my situation in real life, this episode showed a simultaneous sense of unity and division people have when it comes to sports. Lynn and Mr. Grouse both learned they loved the same football team, and despite being very different when it came to how they watched the games on TV, they still felt united in sharing their love for their team and their victory. But when it came to baseball and their respective teams being rivals, that's when they started acting bitterly towards one another. They made an unnecessary rivalry out of their newfound sports buddy friendship when they didn't have to. They let their personal feelings about their teams cloud their shared enjoyment of the game and felt they could no longer be associated with one another because of those feelings. Believe me when I say I've been through that several times in my life, and it's not a pleasant experience. So I am glad the two leading characters were willing to reconcile after they dropped some hints about wanting to put their broken friendship back together. But now that I've brought them up, let's talk about the two main stars of the story. First, there's Mr. Grouse. This episode dives a little bit more into his character, and we find out he's really big on sports, something no one ever knew before, at least as far as we know. However, I understand why no one knew of this since he tends to keep to himself. We get a backstory on his love for sports and his wife, and I really felt sympathetic for him here. Building upon his role in 11 Louds a Leapin', knowing his family lives far away, and assuming his wife died before the series began, and she really enjoyed sports like her husband, you can't help but feel sorry for a guy who feels lonely since he lost the love of his life and no longer had someone to share in the happiness. Simply put, the backstory about his wife leads me to believe that's part of the reason why his character is presented as consistently irritable, and I can't blame him if that also contributes to why he always wants to be left alone. It's not right to push people away, but I understand why he does it. Still, he was willing to open up to Lynn about his past, even giving her the autographed football from the first game he saw with his wife, and that may not have been an easy thing for him to do in the beginning. He felt comfortable around Lynn. It was clear he could trust her out of anyone else to hold on to such a prized possession. He saw Lynn as the only other person besides his late wife who could have such an immense love for the Lions, and I'd bet anything Lynn may have been the one to fill a void this old man had been needing to fill for a long time. Speaking of Lynn, she's my next positive. In my opinion, this is Lynn's best episode because it plays right into some of the most defining aspects of her character. Those would include instances of her being rough with her siblings who cower in fear of what she might do to them, and her being very big on sports. Although this is one of the few sports-related episodes where she's not actually seen competing in any of them. Rather than another episode where we see the physically athletic side of her character at work, we saw the sport spectator side of her character this time, and it really played true to who she is, especially with the good luck rituals and gross eating habits she's best known for. We also got to see the lonelier side of her character when we, the audience, witness how she never has anyone to watch sports with, although I do have a critique on that which I'll get to later. In a sense, you do feel bad for her. You can only get so much enjoyment from high-fiving yourself until you realize it's more fun to have someone else to do it with you. She may have been okay with it before, but you could tell after she and Mr. Grouse had their fallout following the fun they had earlier, and after seeing that father and daughter having a good time on TV, you knew right then and there she needed to put an end to their conflict. Of course, she did try to get Lola and her other sisters to watch the game with her, all of whom refusing since it's not their thing, and this raised a very interesting question that was never addressed throughout the episode. So this is where I bring up my one and only minor critique. If her family didn't want to watch the games, why didn't Lynn call any of her other friends to come over? We've seen her watching baseball with Margot and how many other girls in previous episodes like Frenzy. It sort of suggests that she's been watching games alone for a long time, so unless no one else was conveniently around, there's no reason as to why Lynn was always by herself. Maybe there could have been a a moment where she tries to call Margot to come over, but then finds out she's not home. At least there would have been a storyline reason as to why her other friends left her high and dry. Like I said, it's not something that drives the episode down by a whole lot, but it's just something that gets you thinking. Overall, when it comes to relatability, this episode is top notch. Lynn and Mr. Grouse were portrayed very authentically when it came to the unity and divisiveness sports can bring out in anybody, and they each learned to respect one another and not let their personal feelings about their opposing teams get in the way of a newfound friendship. That's what makes the difference between celebrating alone and sharing the excitement with others, the latter being much more preferred. There was great development for both Lynn and Mr. Grouse, with the latter talking about his backstory, and it was very touching to say the least. Besides my critique about Lynn not calling any of her other sports friends to watch the games with her, on top of no storyline explanation as to why they were all absent, this is definitely one of the best episodes of season 4, and like I mentioned earlier, Lynn's best episode of the series, in my opinion of course. With that said, I give Good Sports a 9.9 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of Good Sports. Always remember that no matter what your differences may be when it comes to sharing the same passion, try not to let your personal feelings get in the way. Finding more common than uncommon ground makes for a much better relationship, and Lynn and Mr. Grouse can use that lesson once hockey season rolls in. But that's another story for another time. So, as far as this episode goes, what did you guys think of it? Love it? Hate it? Something you would add? Change? Keep it as it is? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to this channel for the latest Loud House content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.